Greetings and welcome to my channel. This is Sorcerer Tal. You can also find me on Facebook in Sorcerer's Guild. Today we are going further with the Going Goblin series, and we are going to be discussing how to summon a goblin. Now, in the last video of this series, I talked about the many different concepts of what a goblin is, and one of those ideas is a creature that is created or manifests under certain circumstances. And we talked about how we could create those circumstances. Now, one of the examples I gave in that video is in a blacksmith shop where there's odd smells and flickering lights that people can see things out of the corner of their eyes, and imagine little beings that might either be helping or hindering them in their work as they pound away at the iron on the forge there. Or the same thing in a stable where there's the rotted hay and the horse offal manure, and all the different things that are going on there create smells, and one might imagine little things scurrying around in the background. And then, once they have imagined those things and they've given them form, this creates a goblin, or what in phase terminology would more be called a bobkin. A goblin, a bobkin are essentially the same thing. This is what we are creating when we are looking into these areas. And this is most of the things that we call goblins come from this. The little creatures that lurk underneath the stairs and do little things. And a lot of times people have negative connotations with these things, but most people are afraid of ghosts. And, well, that's really just something we're taught. This fear of the unknown, this fear of those things that are a little bit different than us. And so we tend to associate these goblins with doing bad things. But like we said before, in the last video, these things can be worked with, and not even all of these stories is the goblin considered scary. Okay, so I didn't officially make this one in a playlist in the last one. I called it Cryptid Cryptid Tales. And we talked about goblins, and I did say we talked a little bit about how to summon one. Now, there are things out there that manifest in a very goblin-like way, but most of them came from being conceived in this sort of way. There's a manifestation that occurs, and once that manifestation occurs, then things take off and begin to spread. And of course there are things that match that are a little more than that, but that's kind of where energetic beings come from. They have a spontaneous generation point from which they spring, and then they begin to manifest or even evolve differently over time as ideas are put into them, concepts are laid into the idea, and the story around them unfolds. And then there's also, of course, the self-will involved in there, which keeps them never quite being what it is we are told they are, but because they are beings that are created by someone visualizing a form, they are always affected by that. And that last part, about it being a form that is visualized by man and humans, is not true of all fae. But it is true of the types of bobkins that we're going to be working with to summon a goblin into being in our working today. Okay, so as I said, we need somewhere hidden where you can almost imagine something being a little bit of something rotted. And we've got a few different things going on here. As you prepare to imagine your goblin, you should have a name set out beforehand of what the goblin's name is going to be. And you want to make sure this first time you're only imagining a goblin. You're not imagining a bunch of little creatures scurrying around just yet. We'll get to that. And this project can continue on to some very interesting ideas as it introduces us into the ideas of going goblin ourselves, but also some of the types of goblins we can form, or bobkins, as a type of fey servitor that will be useful to us in other ways besides impelling us on our journey into working with the Fey quartz. Okay, so for this particular bodkin, I've picked a piece of arbutus burl wood. It's very odd looking. It's got a lot of nooks and crannies in there itself, but it almost looks face-like in a lot of ways. And there's lots of things where a goblin might hide if it was real small, but it also has been drifted, and even though it's not rotted, it has kind of a rotted look to it. And that is one of the things here to give the goblin something to draw upon. An arbutus tree is a type of tree up here that's really unruly for a tree. It kind of just decides how it's going to grow, when it's going to start doing berries. It's got bark that just peels off at random times. It's a very odd, unruly tree, grows in odd shapes and ways. Perfect for a goblin. It's almost a goblin tree in a lot of ways. And then we have another piece of driftwood here that provides the goblin its cave. It's very difficult to see down into the very back of this hollowed out piece of driftwood log. So a very small goblin could hide right down inside of there, and even if you looked right inside, you'd never be able to see him. He always has somewhere, some shelter to hide in, some place where you can imagine a very small being could be if it still wanted to hide from you. And then we've got the bit of rot, which is an old piece of gourd, but also a pine cone from one of the trees in the yard that fell into the little pond out there, and it just been kind of rotting in the muck for a while. And that is very much the kind of thing where that we associate with goblins in particular. So we've got our Bodkin goblin going on here, and the idea behind this goblin, actually, like I said, as you get to prepare to imagine it, it's a lot like a servitor. Or an egregore, or more like a tulpa, really. All the different categories that we use. We don't want to let those limit us. This is in many ways another one of those categories. But when we are making this goblin, we are not drawing on our life force energy to create it through our imagination like we do with a tulpa. We are providing a form. We are providing a conceived form under the correct circumstances for a being to manifest. And you're going to want to think about this goblin more than once. And just assume that he's down in there. He's somewhere in there being goblin-y. And again, you're going to want to have some kind of idea of what you're going to give him. At this point, the first bit is going to be that little bit of rotted pine cone, but other than that, I'm going to be giving the goblin, when I can't say his name yet, even though I have his name, you don't want to say that until you're ready. I'll be giving him just little bits of shiny things, little trinkets and toys that I will put in front of there for him to play with, and occasionally bits of food and that sort of thing. Those that can be taken away. He's so tiny that you wouldn't be able to tell the amount he ate, so you just give tiny little bits. Eats the smallest amount, less than you can see, and then you get rid of the rest just a couple hours later, because he doesn't want unwanted pests being drawn into there either, yeah? Okay, you can give him smoke, stuff like that, whatever it is you feel the goblin needs. And it won't just be how you feel the goblin needs, it's what you imagine the goblin needs in this first imagining. So you're going to want to have a lot of the detail ready when you first say the goblin's name and suspect them of being in there. But also that they are ready to make deals with you. That's part of the idea. You have to have those ideas ready. And and a few things that the goblin is going to do in return. One of them is going to be mentoring you to interact with the kind court and being able to go goblin. Before that, we'll get into going goblin in the next series, in the next episode in this series. But for now, you want one that's going to be able to help you gain introduction to the kind court and help you reclaim the wildness within man without going totally berserk and doing anything nuts. And I keep saying within man, but I mean within humans. That's one of them things that gets stuck in our language. I very much do not want you to conceive of the human race as male dominant. That is one of the things we need to shed. So, without losing we want to return to the wild without losing our humanity. But that is what's wrong with humans, and we will begin learning to shed a lot of that with this idea of going into Goblin Mode and becoming feral, re-embracing reality. Because this society, government, rules, laws, all that we have created, that's artificial. We're going to talk soon about what is actually artificial. That's part of this process of going feral, is realizing that the real world is out there. This stuff we've created within the city walls, that is the small, isolated, artificial. This is the pretend. So going feral is embracing the fuller reality. Goblin Mode is what will get us there. Going into Goblin Mode reminds us what has true value. That's what, this idea of going after the F's, feasting and food and frolicking and the things that are fun. These are the things that life is for. These are the things that why we exist. So we're going into Goblin Mode, becoming feral, to remind us the whys of existence. Because before we can approach the kind court, we must know what life is, or else we'll be very hard to communicate with. Okay, and we'll talk about what the kind court is very soon. I know we've been talking all this about the AWOD, so I'm talking about the kind court, but we'll get to that. Anyways, so we got the things here, and really, it's as simple as that. Setting up the things, looking at them, and imagining all the things about this particular goblin. Like I said, he's going to be funky and interesting. Following his own set of rules that allow him to exist as he sees fit by finding the twist within the existing, by finding his own twist within the existing pattern. He's going to be a very wood goblin, and for now at least he's going to at least be able to be very small and live in a piece of driftwood. He has interest in shiny objects. He's going to be a liaison with me and the kind court, and helping me teach everyone how to go Goblin Mode, and helping me with this project of guiding towards Goblin Mode. I felt like there had to be some cool consonants there, but I couldn't come up with it. Sorry. We'll get. I'll work on my charisma points. Anyways, yeah. So, and then once you have finished imagining all the things about the goblin, he's going to have skin the same color as this arbutus, and his face is it's going to be kind of like that. His face is all wrinkled up like the burl, like the knots in that burl wood there, and his name is Krell. And he is the goblin that lives inside the hole in that piece of wood. And now we simply begin believing that Krell lives inside that piece of driftwood. And he is there as my liaison to the kind court. Okay. So, that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you once again for joining us. Stay tuned for more videos on Goblin Mode and a slow introduction to working with the Fae in a way that will work out a bit better for us than what we had before. Like I said, with my mom's death, that changed things, and so we had to adapt. So there's still a work in progress to allow us to interact with the Fae and create an alliance, but we're going to be able to work directly with the Kind Court at this point. And I'll explain what that is very, very soon, but this is going to work out better. This is a much better way of going about things. Anyways, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please take the opportunity to do so now. Don't forget to like the video, it helps me in the algorithm. But that's going to be it for this episode. Bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tal.